Hello. Good morning, afternoon, maybe I don't know, whatever time of the day it is for you. Some of you might know me already as JRT, and today we'll be going over the process of flying the any builds, or I guess you could call it default A330, 200, 300, 300 passenger freighter conversion, or Beluga XL in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. It's not going to be a traditional tutorial. We're going to kind of just go from point A to point B and kind of narrate over what's happening, explain what's going on, and show you guys how this plane works. Some of you I know are VTubers that might be interested in flying these aircraft. So that's why I decided to put it together after seeing a lot of tutorial videos that really didn't explain things very well, or kind of tell you the why behind what's going on, or just kind of gave you bad information and didn't really show how the plane works. Now, I'm going to disclose right now, I'm not a real A330 pilot. I haven't been flying in the cockpit for a good 5-6 years now. So I'm just going to give you my knowledge that I have as a guy in a sim that's flown Airbuses for a long time on just kind of how to fly it in a way that's easy to understand. So don't expect a ton of depth, but kind of just enough to get you going and let you have a good, fun flight. Not necessarily on or off of like an online network, but just kind of enough to make things work. So, as Microsoft likes, we have a walk around for this airplane. It's not very long. You know, the mandatory items are really just 3 things, and that's going to be to remove all of our little pitot-static cover things and like the little AAA indicator deal or whatever that is. Then we're going to remove the chocks, which clicking 1 removes all 3, and same with the engines, we're just going to remove both engine covers. By just removing 1, we're going to fly the CF6 version today from General Electric on this A330-300. Nice and big, very cool. And we're going to be going from Atlanta to Nashville to start off with. So we're going to go click on the door handle, get inside the airplane. And then hit backspace, since it didn't put me in the cockpit. Alright. Starting off here in the A330. We're going to start off our flight with ground power already connected. And that's okay. So what we're going to do is turn on external power 1A and external power B. Our batteries are off, so we're going to turn them on. Turn on batteries 1, 2, and then the APU battery. I'm going to follow that up with how I like to do things, which is turning on the fuel pumps. There we go. Very cool. That's what we like to see. And then next up, we'll turn on the IRS. So nav on all 3 examples. Very nice. Now I have my IRS settings, I think, to instant align still. So you're not going to have to deal with waiting time. And I used a tool that I like to use a lot, and have been using for many years in the sim brief to do the calculation, to get ourselves a route, and do our fuel calculation for today's route. If you do have sim brief, you would want to log in under the options menu right here. I'm not going to show that, as that would reveal my real name, which kind of goes against the whole VTuber thing, right? That's not good. But if you chose to use sim brief, you have it in the settings here. With your username punched in, what you can do is import your flight from SimBrief by clicking right here on the tablet. Oh my! Why ain't that embarrassing? Give me just a second to fix that problem. Just threw our credibility in the trash in the first second here. So we'll quickly plug this into SimBrief. Rather grab from SimBrief my pilot ID. Actually, the pilot ID is not so bad, because that's just the ID number of the pilot rather than who you actually are. And yep, okay, that's all fine. Alright, and we can get back to the simulator now. If I can remember where my scene is. There it is. Thanks, OBS. Sim brief import. Atlanta to Nashville. Our alternate's going to be Huntsville, Alabama. And it's giving us our METAR. So that's cool. So it's the 6th day of the month in Zulu time, and you're recorded at 1352 Zulu. Doesn't sound quite right, but sure. Oh, my apologies. It was at 613 You know what? We're gonna. It's been a long time since we took aviation meteorology. We're gonna shut up on the date format, 'cause I don't remember. But the important words of wings are 320 at 9 knots. 10 steps per mile visibility. Sky conditions are clear. So no clouds. Temperature is -3 Celsius, dew point -12 Celsius. Altimeter is 3035 inches of mercury. This would be as Q, and then 4 digits in hectopascals. Which is actually the same as millibars, for anybody that's kind of outside of North America or not ruled by the U.S. Marks, nothing terribly important here. And Nashville is kind of the same deal, except it's 360 at 4, 10 such miles, clear. -6, -12, temperature is 3052. Alright, very cool. That plan, ground, it's all okay. And payload. So we'll take our state payloads from SimBrief. 0 fuel weight, 17.5. Fuel there, and we'll apply our load. Instant to save you guys some time. Very cool. So what we'll also do is go to the init page here. We're not going to use CBDLC today since it's not available. And we'll initialize our route. Very nice. Land Nashville, we're Delta 1155. So crossing X81, and we're going to cruise at flight level 280 today. That looks alright. Just going to click right here, it'll take our values over for us. And our block fuel today is 10,400 kilograms, so that will be 10.4. It's the same format, whether it's in kilograms or pounds, it's going to be in thousands. So 10,400 would be 10.4. Punch that in. Great. And then we're going to take a look at my other friend that I like to use, which is known as Navigraph Charts. Navigraph Charts is a part of the Navigraph Ultimate subscription, which is a paid service, but arguably a very, very good value for your money, which provides you with navigation data, charts, and a lovely little EFB kind of deal that makes everything really easy to see and understand. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what I'm looking at on Navigraph Charts as we fly. And we'll go with a quick window capture. I'm going to call it Navigraph Charts. And it'll be Navigraph Charts at EXE, capture method automatic. Sweet, there's no audio to capture at all. So what we're going to do is, whoa. Control click that, and we're going to move it down below my modeling stuff to just above Microsoft Flight Simulator. Okay. So this is Navigraph Charts. Pretty cool. Nifty little application. We're going to clear out this chart from the top right here. And we're going to import our flight to Nashville. We're going to go click Import Flight under the Flights tab when we don't have one loaded. Import from SimBrief. ATL to KATL to KBNA. That's going to import there. And we're going to be able to write in our runway real quick, because that's not correct, right? So normally we don't really have a way to taxi to the north runway in an efficient manner. And normally they're not going to quite give you that unless you're going to the north. Actually, no. So maybe the north still works, but just for today's purposes, we're going to take the long runway. And that's going to be runway 27 right. That's what I got earlier today, so that's what I remember. So we'll go 27 right, change 2. It's the same departure, still valid for that runway, so it's going to leave that on there. Otherwise, we tell you to select a new one. Very cool. And we'll also kind of pre-select our approach into Nashville. So here's Nashville, 20 left. What would we like today? I think we'll go with a simple ILS. Maybe we'll show you how to use the autoland function of this plane. I think that might be kind of a fun little thing. So we're going to go ILS, 20 left, final approach. So there's no transition on that. And that's what we'll do today. And then now that that's all sorted out, we're going to punch this into our airplane. Okay. So we're going to go to our flight plan in the MCDU. See Atlanta. It's already up here. Depart. We're going to click that line select key and then click the same one again for the departure. And we're going to select our runway. You can use these two arrows here to scroll up and down. Pushing up is going to move us down the list. Pushing down is going to move us up physically. So we're going to go down to 2. So go down and select 27 right. And then what we're going to pick out is going to be the pencil to departure. These are all alphabetically listed. And we're just going to move down the list. We get what we want. Pencil 2. And then the transition we have on the pencil 2 is just straight up pencil. So we're not going to select anything else. And then we're going to click insert, and that'll insert it into our flight plan. And we're going to actually be able to see that on the map right here. Pretty cool, right? I agree. So now the pencil 2 is in here. We can go and add our arrival in. And that's going to be the Swift into Nashville. So we're going to click select KB&A using the close this line select key. And then arrival. We're going to go ILS 20 left. There we go. And then our arrival is the Swift to Yagier transition. And we're going to do insert, just like before. Perfect, right? We're just going to kind of look through our flight plan a little bit using those same scroll keys. Check out what's in or out of here. That are all generally... Oh, hey, that looks like a problem. So it looks like your plane's like, pencil? Pencil? Well, we don't like that one bit. And we can solve that problem. We're just going to click clear to remove the discontinuity. Then it'll just be pencil once and continue our flight plan to Yagier before continuing on the Swift to arrival all the way down. And there's a manual at the end of this approach, and that's fine. That's how it's supposed to look. Cool. And you can always hit F flight plan to go back to what your current waypoint is, and it'll just bring you to the top if you hit this button again. Well, that's cool. Nice to see that that's all working fine. And our Q nation needs to be set to inches of mercury. Forgot that earlier. And our current weather in inches of mercury here in Atlanta today is... Let's double check, make sure I got live weather on. Okay, cool. Simulator's not telling me. That's not great. Oh, there it is. 30.33. And I'm not going to bother changing that one over because it's different. It's Copilot's. Who cares about him? Copilot's not even here. Didn't even show up to work today. So 30.33. Very nice. Gadgeteer. Awesome. Okay. Next up on our list, it's going to be our takeoff data. So we're going to click Performance, which I clicked right here. Right here is our takeoff data 27 right. It's going to be our takeoff data page. And what we're going to do is go back into our little tablet and go do our takeoff. So we're going to click the takeoff button on our tablet. one way is not right. But we're going to go like conditions sync. And that'll sync it to what we got for the plane in our current live weather. It's pretty cool. So it's -3°C. We got our takeoff runway available. The heading of the runway. The wind, so that's 320 at 9. Outside temperature, 3°C. Altimeter, it's going to be in hectopascals. Can't get it in inches of mercury quite yet. That's fine. You know, worst case scenario, you just punch it in hectopascals, flip it over to inches, or it doesn't really matter because it's just the calculation. And it's the same thing. It's two different units for the same thing, which is just air pressure. So we're going to try the flaps 1 because we're pretty low. We're pretty light. Air conditioner we're going to leave on because, you know, people like heat and air conditioning. It's cold out. You know, we don't want their passengers to freeze. That's mean. And anti-ice, we're going to turn them on. So that's going to have our engine and wing anti-ice on because it's -3°C out. Force turbo is going to be off. Use force turbo if you want to force to do a full power takeoff, all the way throttle forward, all the power you can possibly get at takeoff. And we don't need to do that, right? That wears out the engine. That's a lot of power. We're probably going to use a flex takeoff today, which we'll explain in just a second, if it gives us a flex number at the end of this calculation, which I'm pretty sure it will. Yep, not terribly surprising, right? We're not going to use a lot of runway and all that because we're not very heavy. Okay, so flex 70°C means that's the assumed temperature for the takeoff. I'm not entirely sure where that temperature refers to, but higher the temperature, usually the less power you're going to be using on takeoff. V1. That's our speed at which we have to take off. We won't have enough runway to stop if we have a problem with our engines or any other reason we need to abort the takeoff. That means we have to continue. So if we lose an engine, for example, after V1, it is what it is. You're going to have to take off with just one engine. It's not going to be safe to stop. We don't have enough runway. So our V1's going to be at 135 knots. You can see that marked out here on our runway because it's the physical kind of representation of the runway and where our V speeds are going to occur within that runway. VR, 144 knots is our rotation speed. That's when we're going to rotate the plane, we're going to take off and fly away. And then V2, we're exactly what that refers to, but that's another speed. It's pretty cool. So usually like V2 plus 10 is our climb out speed. Yeah, it's pretty good. Maximum takeoff weight for our performance. That'll be like our hypothetical maximum takeoff weight. Given what we've already got going on. Gross weight CG. It's gonna be your like where your center of gravity is within the airplane. Be 25.7 today, and our THS is what we're gonna send our trim to. So our takeoff trim will be 4.7 up. Now we're gonna hit send to FMGS in order for it to send to our little screen down there. Great. And then we're just gonna actually click right to the left of each one of these speeds to just insert the R. Not. I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. Confirm takeoff data. Wow! It's all right in. Thanks, Indie Builds. Alright. 90cc, thrust reduction 2500. Very cool, very nice. So we like to see. And our flap 1 up 4.7. And if we wanted to, we could play around with our flap configurations if we would like. Not much of a point. Flaps 1's really, 2 is not going to help us very much over flaps 1. But sometimes it does. So this is worth checking. So we got our takeoff performance. We got all that set up. We've got all of our V speeds. We got that. We know that the first, so we're going to take a look at our chart, kind of see what the top altitude is on our chart. Sometimes I do this. I usually do this earlier in the flight, but we're just going to take a look real quick at our chart. We have pulled it up. This is how I like to display my charts, is by going to the 3 dots here and clicking Open Chart Overlay. Sometimes you have to find it within the chart menu. But you do that like this. That you go click the chart button and SID. If you're looking for a departure, and we want the pencil to, we can kind of. So you can use this button to make it a layer on your map. I usually in the 90% opacity. That's just how I like it. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can do 70 or 100 if that's what you like. And that's okay. And to get the little arrow on the map for your airplane, you need to have the program Symlink running from Navigraph. That's free. That's a part of your subscription. That's included. Okay. Let's hop right to this chart here on the insets kind of description. It's like a narrative description of what you're doing. And it says top altitude's 10,000 feet. So what we're going to do is set 10,000 feet in the FCU, up in the kind of like dashboard looking bit, instrument panel, player shield, whatever you call it. Any kind of answer is all right. So I have Moby flight with a Airbus FCU in front of me. So I'm just going to twist the knob on that. If you want to change it on your own, use your scroll wheel, and then click here to flip between the hundreds and thousands, if that's what you would like to do. I can just do it with physical hardware. That's how I like it. And we're going to set ourselves to 10,000 feet. Great. We're going to just turn on our flight directors as well, so we have manage mode while flying out today. Alright, that's all set up. Plane set up, forest set up, we're loaded. Everything's looking good. Hypothetically speaking, if we're on VATSI, we've already picked up our departure clearance. They're going to send you usually a PDC if you're a jet here. And at that point, we're good to push back. Now, the plates to the airport world, the rules are a little bit different, but we're in America right now, so we're going to base it off that. What I use for the airplane itself has its own pushback system. I don't really like it to the manual. I'm sorry about that. I don't really like the manual pushback systems too much. That's not really my thing. You use that using this. You have a aft, left, right, stop. That allows you to control the direction of where you're going. I prefer to use Ground Services X Pro, created by Flight Sim Dream Team. That's what I use. I've used it for as long as I can remember. And that just kind of usually gives me a better, more accurate pushback, just kind of right onto the center line that I want. So that's what we're going to use today. You don't have to. You can use this if that's what you like. So, before we do that, though, we need to start up our auxiliary power unit and the APU bleed so that our engines can actually start and we can have electricity. APU is an auxiliary power unit, and it'll generate electricity using a very small turbine in the back of the airplane. If you ever kind of see what looks like just kind of a hole in the back of the tail of an airplane, that's the exhaust port for the APU. And there's usually a door somewhere that'll let air in. So, we're going to go APU master switch on. Start switch for the APU. Press that. It's going to flash up as on. Do it a little too fast, it's going to not do it, and then you're just going to hit it again. And then APU bleed on. And then I'm going to set up some of my lights to how I like them. We're going to set our nav lights to 2. Our rotating beacon on. We don't really need anything else right now. Actually, no. Our strobe light to auto. That's how I like it. And we're going to armor emergency exit lights. No smoking is going to be on. Seatbelts on. And outside of that, we're fine. Some people are strict about lights. Some people aren't. It's a video game. Play how you like. Alright. And we can see down here, I'm going to turn up the screen brightness on the loader data screen. The APU is spooling up. See the percentage of like the turbine speed right here. That's going to go all the way up to 100%. And you see your APU generator, and that's kind of like what we're using in terms of electricity, percent of electrical load, voltage, and the frequency in hertz. Bleed over here is what you are using in terms of the bleed air. Well, the bleed air pressure is the APU's bleed system. Flap open means the intake flaps open. Which, maybe we can see it, maybe we can't. It's a little hard to see sometimes. I can't quite find it today, but that's not the end of the world. And that screen will go away once the APUs fall all the way up, but I'll show you what it looks like real quick. By manually bringing up the APU display, down on this lower EFIT, this loader display, you just click APU, and it'll just show up. Look, 100%, 12% electrical load, 116 volts, 400 hertz. Leads 35 pressure, PSI of pressure. And once 100%, the exhaust gas temperature is 420 degrees. Cool. That's all sorted up and sorted out. So we're going to push back from the gate. prepare for pushback and departure if you're using GSX. Delta Airlines, because that's what I want the liver things to look like, because that's who we are. And it's going to tell us to get de-icing treatment. That's a good idea. Ice is bad. This plane builds up ice. And ice means you die. And nobody likes being dead. At least I hope not. So the de-icing vehicles are going to come up and de-ice the plane for us. And actually, we can dismiss the ground power unit because we already have our APU started up. Big old plane, though. Always like the look of the A330 a lot. Very nifty. Let me lean away from the plane a little bit here. Pretty good. So we're going to go with the default choice. Fluid type 1, concentration is 75%. And these guys are going to de-ice the wings for us. I mean, pretty cool. Fun to watch. You actually have to watch them spray the de-icer, like the de-icing fluid on there, which melts away all the ice. And we, at least in this case, de-ice and prevent ice on the plane, because ice can fill up the wings, disturbs airflow, robs you of lift on the engine, it can rob you of power, and that's bad. You need thrust and lift in order to fly, and if you don't have those, you crash and die. And dying's bad. And killing your passengers is bad too. You shouldn't do that. Definitely not good. So watch the de-icing guys kind of do their thing for a minute here while we wait to fly. Wait for a pushback, rather, so we can fly up out of here. Nice and loud. And once they've gotten back, they drop down their little thingies, go back down to the ground and drive away. Let's go back to the cockpit. That's a reasonable request. A lot of times you just also wind up pushing buttons for the sake of pushing buttons, and that's alright too. What I'm going to turn on here is my map, as my constraints, so you can see constraints on the map. I just like that. You don't have to if you don't want to. We're being picked up by our ground crew. We're being pushed back. That's perfectly okay. I don't mind that one bit. Look at that. So we're going to go nose left, tail right. And of course, we're going to need to release our parking brakes so that we can go. I moved that armrest by clicking it, by the way. And I'll just move it up out of the way for you, so make it a little easier to see your parking brake. Alright, pushing back. Pushback's going well. They're going to line us up nicely with that runway, which is all what we want. Perfect. We're going to set our parking brakes, and then begin to start our engines. Now, because our AP bleed's on, we have air going through the bleed system to the engines, and then air's going to start to spin up our turbine, and then when it's time, the airplane will add fuel and ignition, and the engine ignites and comes to life. It blows up to its idle speed. So, let's get started, shall we? Down here, I have hardware for this on my trusty Airbus TCA throttle, but I'll still point out to you how you would do this with mouse. You're going to spin to ignition. You're going to turn the ignition engine start selector to ignition start, which is the option on the right here. Just for your mouse wheel or by clicking and dragging. And then we're going to start with starting engine 1. I'm going to flip the switch on my hardware, but you just click right here to do that. Engine 1 will now start. You can see the N2 of our turbine already coming up. We haven't applied fuel to the engine yet. It hasn't been spinning fast enough. And soon, so your M1's starting to climb as well. There we go. About 2021-ish N2. We're going to get our first little bit of fuel. And I'm going to set this clock to run because that's just what I like. Kind of records my time overall for the whole flight. It's kind of block time. Try to hit it right when we push back. That's normally when I do it. I just like that. You don't have to if you don't want it. Alright, 19%, 20% engines available. That means we can start engine 2 as well. Same process, just click right here while we're in ignition start. Starting engine 2. Awesome. And we're going to go to the GSX menu and confirm the good engine start. That means that they're going to pull away the tug and get out of our way. Take the bypass pin that bypasses our nose wheel steering out so we can actually turn when we start taxiing. So we're going to confirm a good engine start. Yay! Alright. Double check, make sure our weather's still live. Yep. Cool. And engine 2 is going to go through the same process as starting up. Our flex at 70 Celsius would be 93.9%. Alright. It's okay with us. Should be able to lower number for lower power. Whatever, can't remember today. Well, man, that really stores my credibility on these things in the trash, but the plane works. Sweet. Wing and engine ATS is already on. It's fine. Engines both started so we can turn off our APU. Turn APU master switch off, APU bleed off. Generally speaking, if it's not lit up, it's working correctly in an Airbus. We're gonna wait for our stuff to kind of get out of the way for a minute here. And our speed brakes are up. That's a little bit of a flaw at the time in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 where it just defaults for your speed brake being out. Absolutely no clue why it does this. But now that our engines are started as well, we'll just turn our engine start switch back to normal. And it says 2000 on our TCAS. This isn't really important when you're flying offline to your transponder. This is how I normally set it up. I'm going to go on all aircraft for the alerts and TARA. So it's going to be advisory and resolution. So it's going to try and help us avoid whacking into other planes, but also advise us when there's traffic in the area. And if we need to do something about it. Both engines are now started. We're going to hit F7 on my keyboard, which is how I like it. That's what it's bound to, because it's what it was in the old games to add 1 notch of flaps. Or you can click and drag the lever into flaps 1, since that's what we have selected for takeoff. And then I'm going to go back to this mode selector down here for the displays, and go to flight controls, and then change our takeoff trim with using whichever binding of your choice to 4.7 up if it's not already 4.7 up. Would you look at that? That's what we like to see. And now that that's all set up nicely, we're going to go follow this checklist here as we begin to taxi out to the runway. We're going to turn off our parking brakes first and begin. I'm going to set our ground spoilers to armed. Our flaps are already set, which is nice. We're going to just kind of look out a bit here. And I'm going to start this chronograph so I can time out my taxis just to see how long it is. Auto brakes, maximum. Cabin check in a second. That's automatic. You don't have to worry about it. Flaps are set to takeoff position already. And takeoff config test is pressed right here. And that tests that our takeoff config is correct. If the press would work, there you go. Takeoff config normal, plane's fine. Got a little too much power here because we're just going to kind of tap the brakes, keep ourselves at between 11 and 15 knots, and make a left turn here. And we'll just keep taxiing out. Actually, and you don't really need them because it's perfectly bright enough, but if you want, turn on your nose light to the taxi position, which is the middle one. And if you want, you can also turn on the runway turn off lights. Our next turn here. A little too fast at 21 knots. We'll hit the brakes for a second here. We'll move over to the other taxiway. As we continue along. Though when you're light, this plane can idle taxi pretty quickly. Generally, I like to taxi around 15 knots. That feels kind of good for me. You can go faster if you want, or you can go slower. Unless you're trying to say otherwise. For example, if you're in an A380, taxiing along around here in Atlanta, while you're passing by the ramps, you're not allowed to go fast for 13 knots. And those are their rules. And just really quickly to double check how our airplane's set up. Speed managed, heading managed. It's an RNAV departure out of here off the ground, so you already have a GPS kind of course to fly. 10,000 feet, sweet. QNH is all set. Awesome sauce. That's what we like to see. And since we calculated for full length, we're going to use full length. Alpha all the way at the end. And we're going to set our nose lights to takeoff, and our landing lights will be turned on. Strobes are already automatic, so we don't have to worry too much about that. We'll line up our airplane with the runway. Operating set to 10. That's how I like it on takeoff. You can set it to 20 if you want. I just like having the first waypoint very well within like my sight along the first turn. Alright, we're lined up now with the runway. We're going to start moving our throttles forward. We're going to do a flex takeoff today, so we're going to go to the climb position, which is our first one down here. And then to the flex position, which is the second big notch. Let's go set our airplane as flex power and not use all the power, meaning that we can kind of save a little bit on engine wear. Approaching V1. Plane's doing pretty darn good. We're building up speed. Here's V1. Now we have to commit to takeoff. And then we've reached our rotation speed. We're going to rotate up off the runway. And then, using the flight director, pulling ourselves into the nice centered thing here. That's doing alright. We have a positive rate of climb. We're going to pull our gear up. I use the G key for this, where you can just click over to the lever over here to do it. That feels pretty good. We're above 400 feet AGL. I'm going to engage autopilot 1. The autopilot's now engaged. And is now flying the airplane. We're still on flex power, however. And that's okay. And it's going to stay like that until we reach a certain altitude above the ground. That's going to be our thrust reduction out. We have this auto-calculate in the iPad, and that's about 1500-ish AGL. And that point's not telling us to give the turn levers to the climb position. It's kind of your basic auto throttle. And that's now there, so it's just the plane's going to now accelerate. As we pass the little S here, we can retract flaps 1 back to the normal position. And our flaps and slats have now been retracted. The airplane will continue in its climb while speeding up to about 250 knots, or any other restrictions that were placed on the takeoff, but rather are on the departure procedure, or speed restrictions imposed by ATC. They would punch in manually using the manual mode instead of managed. That would be by pulling out the knob towards you using the middle mouse instead of right click, which would let you manually set your speed to what you want. Some airports require that, not all of them do. We're going to kind of keep climbing. We're now at about 250 knots. We're going to use our momentum to climb up. Let's keep doing that off of our engine power. We're very light today, so we're going to climb really fast. All the way up to about, would normally be, right now it's restricted to 10,000 feet. Approach or the center will give us a higher thing. We're going to pretend the center's on. Go all the way up to 280. Straight up to our cruising altitude. Made our first turn already, and we're going to keep going down our departure procedure. And normally about here, I'm going to set our Map range to about 80. Sometimes we'll leave it in 40 here until we kind of get out of that tight stretch. But we know the airplane is working fine. Above 80, you lose your waypoint. You usually lose your waypoint kind of indicators on there and labels. So, and I don't really like that. But we reach this point of procedure, Z-land, we're limited to 250 knots. Can't exceed it regardless of our height. Otherwise, you're restricted to 250 knots below 10,000 feet, unless you're otherwise not able to do so. At that point, you communicate that to ATC and do what you need to do. At 10,000 feet, we're going to turn off our landing lights. Let's turn off all our other lights too. Engine anti-gas is going to stay on. Our anti-gas is going to stay on until negative 40 degrees static air temperature, if we are in icing conditions. Since I don't trust the simulator all the time, I do leave the anti-ice on until we reach that temperature. It's just how I am. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. And because I feel a little paranoid today after the last time I flew the A330. Turned on the probe window heat. That's heating up our windows, we're heating up our pitot-static tubes, so that we make sure we have a working airspeed. Climbing quite well. We're almost halfway through our climb, and still getting a lot of climbing out of this thing. 3,400 feet a minute. That's pretty nice when you're very lightly loaded in terms of fuel and not a lot of passengers. So that's pretty good. My sim brief said we had, how many passengers today? 220. So actually, not a terribly light load, but definitely not the maximum of what this plane can do. And very, very little fuel. Only about 10,500 kilograms of fuel. It's almost nothing for this plane because you're not going very far to Nashville. I'm just going to kind of leave the plane as is all the way up to your cruising altitude. And actually, at 18,000 feet, that's the transition altitude in the United States. That varies from country to country around the world. At your transition altitude, you'll turn this to standard. I do with the middle mouse button. Eventually, I will have hardware where I'm just going to do that myself, physically. And once we do that, I'm going to recharge my headset, and we'll see you guys at the descent. Or rather, shortly before our descent. Oh, and we've actually just passed our speed restriction. That's why we're starting to speed up to about 300 knots. At that point, our plane's going to focus on climbing again instead of building up speed. For climb, we're being given extra power today. The computer has decided you will receive 102.6% of your N1. 17,500 feet. See ourselves coming up on 18,000 feet. And put ourselves to standard barometric pressure. Whoop. And I'll see you guys later. Alright. We're back, and we're about 4 hour descent. The airplane is out, prompting us to check our destination data. That means that we need to go to performance page and click next phase until we reach approach. At that point, we see QNH. We're going to put it into landing QNH at the airfield, which would be 3039 for Nashville today at this time. So we go 30 decimal, so, oh, 39. No, it didn't figure clear. 39. There we go. Punch that in. The temperature in Nashville right now is negative 4 degrees Celsius. So we'll hit here for minus. We get +2, but we want minus, and then 3. Punch that in. Winds are 190 at 3 knots. We'll go 190/3. Put that in. And then the minimums on our approach. What we're going to do is pull up the approach chart in Navigraph charts the same way I showed before. I want you guys see it. Minimums here. Doesn't matter which approach category we're in. It's 200 feet AGL. We're 751 feet ASL, or above sea level. And that means we're going to use a radio altimeter for this one, since it's a nice even 200. Perfect. Approach minimums can change based on if you have like obstacles or rough terrain kind of in front of you, and they're when you need to be able to see the runway by before deciding, okay, we need to abort this approach and try something different. ILS gets real low. It's Cat 3. Technically, the minimums are 0. Regular ILS right at this one approach, this equipment is 200 feet AGL. And this can change based on the approach character of the airplane, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, or Delta, which is determined by the speed. And this is your minimum runway visual range as well. So, we're going to do a practice kind of a Cat 3 today, even though the weather's perfectly fine for one. So that's what we're going to do. And that's all set. Second, we need to set up our airplane for the descent itself. And look at the last altitude on our approach chart. Sorry, our star chart. Any altitude is going to be 5,000 feet. So we're going to punch in 5,000 feet. Sometimes if you wish, you can punch in if it's going to connect all the way in, you can put, like it's pretty common in Europe if you're in an uncontrolled area, you can put in kind of when you're intercepting a glide slope. There we go, 5,000 feet. This arrow right here is our top of descent arrow. When we hit that, we're going to push in the altitude knob and her manage descent, and that'll keep us in line with all our restrictions. So, this part of the chart's not to scale, but we're entering in the EI gear, which means that this blue bar below flight level 240, as we measure altitudes of flight level above the transition altitude, as we use all this one assumed air pressure of 290.92 inches of mercury, or 1013 millibars. This blue bar means we need to be above that, so we need to be above flight level 240, or with our standard barometric pressure, 24,000 feet. And then our next one is going to be at A day. We need to be at 250 knots between the altitudes of 12,000 and 8,000 feet. That's why we have bars above and below, with a range of altitudes, a maximum and a minimum. I mean, at breath, we need to be above 6,000, still 250 knots. Hora, 220 knots, above 6,000 feet. Then we're going to end the approach at SIPO at 210 knots at exactly 5,000 feet. So above. If it's the other way, it would be below. And then if it's just one altitude, a bar above and below, that would just be the altitude itself. And we're nearing our top of descent really fast. So here we go. We're going to flip back. See that little thing on the map? When that touches the airplane, I'm going to push in the altitude knob. You can do that by just right-clicking here. Or in my case, I'm going to use the hardware, as that's what I like. Pay for the hardware, I'm going to use it. Almost there. Almost there. TD reached. Push her in. And we'll begin our descent. The airplane's pretty slippery in the A330, so we may need to use a little bit of our speed brakes down here. So spoilers, they spoil the left and great drag, slowing us down and making us drop. There we go. The plane's going to stay within this range of speeds. And it's between these pink bars, that's where it wants to be. And this pink arrow is its like actual target. This is the acceptable range, and that's where the airplane wants to be. Chasing our altitude, our flight path down here, our vertical path, which is indicated by this green dot, and this bar, yellow bar here, is what the airplane's currently at. And this is also just indicates 0 on the vertical speed tape, or the vertical speed indicator. There we are, exactly 300 knots, heading down right on profile. Our throttle is going to kick up the engine a little bit just to kind of hold us here. That's what it wants us to do. And that's okay. We're just going to let the airplane do its thing. The Airbus is generally smarter than a human being. Boeings usually are too, except for when they're not. But in almost every case, the Airbus is. And it's going to have us actually hitting land right at about flight level 240. That's okay. Now, spoilers are in the arm position when they're raised like that. I'm going to put them just back down to normal. Armed spoilers means that as soon as we touch the ground, the spoilers are going to pop up all the way to their maximum extent to help us drop off all our lift instantly, keep us on the ground, and make us start to slow down with the extra drag. And we'll see a pretty cool operation as this goes on once we land. When we engage our thrust reversers as well. At this point, you could go into where you can do a landing calculator. We don't have one in the iPad in this plane yet, but maybe we will in the future. See how it's getting to the bottom of that speed range? The plane doesn't want to be there. It's going to go chase our altitude back up again. We've now cleared lens and cleared our restriction at level 240. And it's going to go down to Swift. Between 200 and level 130. When we pass through 18,000 feet again, we'll set our altimeter barometric pressure to what it is in Nashville, which is 30.39 as we inputted into the computer earlier. In airplanes such as the A380, A350, and A400M, you'll see some of the stuff you put into the performance page change how it calculates what some of your stats for landing are going to be. It doesn't really do that in these older Airbuses. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. This pink is kind of where we're going to be bottoming out from constraints. Your bottom descent. So if you're going to have to level off at some point in the descent, that's what's going to show you. Or just the end of your descent at the end of your knob here. Generally speaking, the Airbus wants to create a 3-degree flight path within the constraints, but it will bend your flight path to the constraints when needed. Fortunately, these airplanes back then weren't sure enough did not have a vertical situation display. The newer ones do, being the A350, A380, and A400M, and you would be able to see that on there right about kind of down here on those displays. But we don't have that quite yet. That's okay. Not the end of the world. You can say it's a kind of a slippery plane of a slow, leisurely descent. Well, that's perfectly fine, because the computer knows that, and made a good top of descent calculation for us to follow. On our way down into Nashville, Tennessee. $20,000 feet an hour, flight level 200 in the US. And just to stay on in the descent. We never actually reached the temperature that we needed to turn it off during our flight. If we went higher, we most definitely would have surpassed it. Also, if you don't see moisture, you can turn it off as well, but I don't trust the simulator sometimes, so we're just going to keep it on. This outer tank transfer here means that the fuel in the outer tanks will be transferred. We can take a look at that by going to fuel, where we can see all of our fuel tanks and where the fuel is. Outer tanks, 0 and 0, and trim tank, all have been transferred out. That's outer tanks transferred. Everything down here is a different display. You got engines, bleed, pressure, electrics. So you got AC and DC electric, hydraulics, APU, air conditioning, door indications, wheels. So you can see the wheel temperature and brake temperatures, flight controls, like active output of your flight controls for fuel. And then cruise has kind of a default page here. and all. Just kind of flips through all of them every time you press it. Moves it up by 1. Pretty nifty little thing at the Airbus. And we're actually below 18,000 feet, so what we're going to do is set up our pressure. It's going to be 30.39. Now the airplane's going to quickly chase down to that vertical profile again to rejoin it because its altimeter has been changed, therefore the altitude readout's been changed, or the altimeter settings changed, so the altitude readout's been changed and been readapted to get our altitude corrected for the air pressure outside. And there we go. We're back to where we need to be. The engine will stay on idle until we slow back down to the desired speed, and then generally they'll pick back up. Airplane's doing a good job staying within constraints. This blue arrow is just showing that we're going to be kind of the end of our descent. It's not exactly correct. It's changing constantly with the way the plane's moving. Normally it doesn't do that in most Airbuses. I guess in this version it does. That might also just be an A330 thing. That's possible. But I'm just going to continue on our descent down to 5,000. And when it's caused by a constraint, it is pink. There's also a similar white arrow that's done for the top of climb, and it'll do the same thing for the top of climb from a constraint as well. If a departure procedure, for example, has a maximum on its climb before a certain waypoint, that it'll limit you to. Bring your RAF range into 40, make things a little bit easier to read. Pink dot, that's a slowdown. We're going to come to our first speed restriction soon. At that point, it's going to begin slowing us down for that restricted speed. Airplane's VNAV is doing very, very well. Let's take a look at the airplane outside a little bit if we want. Flying over... Well, whereabouts are we right now? Tennessee, actually, still. Perfect. We were Chattanooga a little bit earlier. On our way into Nashville. Above 10,000 here at high mat. We're going to be just fine on that one. Plane's doing okay, just vibing, doing its thing. Moisturized. Hydrated. In its lane, living its best life as we continue the descent. Not exactly a fast process, but that's okay. Alright, we gotta go down 250 knots now. Airplane's gonna take care of that real quick for us. We're bringing our thrust back to idle. And I'm not liking how much that vertical path is slipping away. should take care of itself, but if I feel it gets too far away, I'll add a little bit of spoiler to kind of bring it back in. But I don't feel we're going to need that. Looks like we're gonna be okay. No, I don't have as much faith. Just gonna set it at 1/4. Make it a little easier on our plane. See, they've poked out just a little bit to help us slow down and drop a little bit more altitude. And we're on speed at 250 knots, and I'm starting to spool back up again, so I'm going to retract our spoilers. I'm just going to quickly chase our altitude back in and get us back on the correct vertical path. And we're doing alright. Making good progress still. Almost down to 10,000 feet now. Feet. Landing lights coming on. Continue to descend toward Nashville. The speedway is somewhere around here, actually. Maybe not. No, that's Murfreesboro. I almost went to college there. You ever see the Murfreesboro Airport over there? Where they have the flight branch of their university. Learn to fly there, become a pilot, all that whole deal. I choose to go elsewhere. Two school is way too big for me. Yeah, definitely much more of a number than a name there. At least that's just how I felt. We're about 20 miles from the runway itself. It's gonna hit that range ring, so we're gonna bring it back to 20 miles on the range ring. That's how I like it. You don't have to do it that way if you don't want to. You can leave it at 10 for the whole flight, for all I care. Just do what you like. It's all just a preference thing of that, and how you do displays. Smyrna Airport dead ahead of us. It's kind of near where the National Superspeedway is. There it is, right there. There's the track. I've been there. Great track. One of my favorites on iRacing as well. Located in Lebanon, Tennessee. Always a little bit of sightseeing available. As we continue through with our descent down to 5,000 feet. now we've hit another deceleration point that's going to bring us down to 220 knots. Here's denser here. Should be a little bit easier to slow down. Of course, if we don't think we're going to make 220 knots by core, I can always throw out the boards once more by extending our spoilers. Also referred to sometimes as the boards, especially if they're pretty big. And I'm going to, since we're doing an ILS approach today, we're going to do a demonstration of the Cat 3. Turn the landing system indicators on here. So show our ILS data, or in some cases like other approach data, onto here. This is an indication if you're to the left or the right of the localizer for the ILS approach, and then over here just kind of be your vertical guidance as well. For the glide slope. And we'll make 220 knots before we're there. So we're doing pretty good. This is actually going to line us up almost exactly with runway 31 that you can see right here in Nashville. This is our airport that we're going to be landing at, Nashville International. Hanging all right. Remember this being asked about before. These are our flap safety things right here. This little orange bar saying that our first notch of flaps can't be any faster than 240 knots when we put it out. That'll show up for your next notch of flaps all the way down to you and eventually reach full flaps. Doing quite good. We're slowing down at 210 knots. We're going to maintain we're going to hit 5,000 feet at SIPO, 210 knots as well. Perfect. Doing great. Kramer, below 3,000, above 2,000. Alright. And hey, that's a little bit of a flaw with the plane. Should normally hold you there, 210 knots. Don't do that when there's air traffic control online. They'll be very unhappy. What we're going to do is quickly, I pulled the knob and then manually turned it to our speed of 210 knots. That would be by, you can do the same. I did with the hardware. You can do the same by just pulling it and then using your scroll wheel or left or right to motion to set the speed, if you desire. And then we're going to look at our approach chart very quick. Very, very quick. Never have charts. Still on the star. Switch to the approach. ILS 20 left. So Kramer, 3,000. Cool. So that's what we'll descend to real quick is 3,000. So 3,000. Pull. Manual. So that's going to be just kind of manually selected. And go down to 3,000 feet. So this is going to set our plane all the way to idle and enter an open descent. So it's going to be as quick as possible at your given airspeed. Oh my, I forgot to flip off never have shirts. There you go. See, we said 3,000, still 210 knots. Open descent. So it's pulled our engines all the way back to idle. This is going to keep us at our speed. Just pitch down while holding that airspeed until we hit the altitude we desire. We're definitely not going to turn anywhere close to Kramer until we actually hit 3,000 feet. So we don't want to come in up above the glide slope and things like that, because that's not fun to go chase it. I'm going to set our map to 10, because that's going to be nice once we flip back around. We're going to go back to our performance page because it's going to show us what our landing speed. And our approach speed is going to be 126 knots. And our landing speed is going to be 5 below that, 121. We have to when I drop our gear, we're going to wait till we're kind of aligned to do that. Alright, 3,000 feet for a 90-degree turn to the left. And that would be 310. Start turning us around. And start bringing that speed down towards 126 knots. We're adding our first notch of flaps as well. A little more lift, a little more drag. The plane's going to turn tighter the slower we get. Give ourselves another turn in a second here. It's kind of be 30 degrees off from the heading of the approach. That wasn't a correct 90-degree turn. I'm dumb. But that would be to the right of that would be 240, so that's what we're going to turn to. 240. Now there's some more flaps. Don't want to get into that danger zone or that orange down there. Don't want that. That's bad. So we go flaps 2. We're still within our safety zones. We go flaps 3. And full flaps and gear down. See, we're still below the glide slope, which is perfectly fine. That's what we planned. And on our approach, if you saw on our approach chart earlier, we're going to intercept at 2,000 feet. Is going to try and kind of keep us out of that danger zone as our flaps continue to deploy all the way out, and then it's going to drop a little bit more once our flaps are fully deployed. I'm going to hit localizer on the autopilot to have us go line up with the localizer. You see how big our flaps are out now. Kind of slowed down a little bit early, but that's fine. It's not a big deal. Alright, turning into the localizer. We're after Kerm, we're going to go straight down into 2,000 feet. So we're going to turn that into the FCU up here to begin with. Pull it as soon as we hit Kramer. So that we intercepted for so that we intercept the glide slope at the proper altitude at Judd. See the runway out there. Normally, if you're going to do an auto land, you don't see the runway out there, but you do need to do one every 30 days to stay current. Or so I've heard. So stay right about here for a minute. Almost Kramer. Overhead Kramer. And we're going to pull us down to 2,000 feet. Open descent. Just going to drop our power way down, and our plane's going to start dropping. Right down at 2,000 feet. You could, if you wanted to, just engage your approach hold right there and follow the glide slope down. That's always an option too. Nobody's gonna really stop you from that. Cabin check, spoilers arm. Oh, more spoilers real quick. And that'll take care of itself. Usually. We can quickly call the cabin if we want. Have an all call. Some other planes that would resolve it, but guess not today. And I'm going to perform our approach hold on the autopilot. You would normally click here. You can do it on the hardware. And engage autopilot 2 for a Cat 3 dual autopilot autoland. So this is going to have the computers land us, well, completely on its own, without our input really, until we're told to bring the throttles back to idle. There we go. It's gonna follow. Glide slow down. As it's supposed to. Seems like things got a little bit bumpy there for a second. Plane should balance itself out.
1,000.
Seems to have picked a suboptimal runway, even though in real life the weather is showing that the weather is fine for this runway. Strange. The winds are showing completely wrong. That's okay. Let medium auto brakes.
500.
So it'll start as soon as we're on the ground. Engage the brakes. We've already armed our spoilers. We're very much ready to land. It's not a land, so we don't really need to be able to see the runway anyway. Here we come.
400.
300 feet.
100 above.
That's calling us out 100 feet above our minimums.
2 minimum.
Minimums. 200 feet. See how like the trees are making that flicker a bit.
50.
40, 30, 20.
Retard.
Retard the throttles. Back to 0. Aircraft will guide on its own on the rollout. Brakes are engaged. Our reversers are out now. Out is our. You can see the thing opened up and it's spooled up and giving us power in reverse to help us slow down. And we're gonna turn off our reversers. Gonna turn off our auto brakes here. We're just stabbing the brake real quick. And there we go. Turn off our autopilots. That was an autoland. The Airbus A330. A terrible landing rate though. Kill our master warning here for turning off our autopilot. Let's turn it back on real quick. No. It's just gonna keep screaming at us. Hopefully that bug is fixed next week's update. And the autoland's patch, because that was terrible. Most planes aren't that bad. That's gonna wreck my Volante average too. Turn off the taxiway here. Turn off our landing light. And bring ourselves kind of just into the gates where we wish to be. Pull up our flaps too. Pull them all up. There we go. That's what we need to see. Continue bring ourselves into where the planes normally park. Had that been a manual landing instead of an auto landing, that would have been much better, much smoother. Did not like that. That was a rough one. Generally speaking, don't clip buildings. That's bad. Although it's placed buildings in very unrealistic areas, so that is what it is. Not much you can really do about that when Microsoft just has a Microsoft moment sometimes. Hopefully they fix the photogrammetry in the future and I don't have to like install scenery for a ton of these airports. See, we're light. Don't have a lot of gas. Not a lot of passengers. So just hitting a little bit more on the throttle got us a lot of speed there. A little too much speed for this turn. So I'm gonna have to hit the brakes and bleed some of that off. And start turning in. Plane does handle surprisingly well, especially at low speeds. On taxiways, and see we still have the jetway issue, how the jetways are set. That's just how the sim's going to be until they get some more updates out to fix it up. And get it what it needs. Let's go park here. Let's park out. Do our thing. End our flight. And end this lovely video. Just going to try to avoid hitting the jetway. The very unrealistically placed jetway. Turn on our parking brake. I'm not going to turn on the AP or anything because we're ending today. We're just going to lose the electricity. That's fine. Not my problem. That's a ground crew's problem. So thank you very much for coming out on a flight with me today. Hopefully you learned at least a little bit about the A330, its operations, how to make this thing work, and just a basic level of just kind of flying around a bit from one airport to another. If you were interested in the tools that I showed off, that is the pushback and stuff like that was done with Ground Services X Pro, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024. SimBrief is free, and if you make a free Navigraph account, you get that. Navigraph Charts is a part of the Navigraph Ultimate subscription, which I've also had for a very long time. Recommend all those tools a lot. Hope you had fun. If you'd like to see more of this content, be sure to tell me in the comments below, or if you're in my Discord, tell me there. I hope you have a great day.